Hey, thanks for tuning into the Long Grey Lesson Show. It's a podcast that motivates and inspires leaders to pursue their passions and to leave a positive impact in their communities. All right, welcome to another episode of the Long Grey Lesson Show. How are you doing today, Tommy?
I'm doing fantastic.
Well, I heard tomorrow is actually your birthday. Is that correct?
That is correct, May 29.
That's awesome. So do you have any celebration or any big plans coming up?
My teammates took me out a little bit yesterday, but we'll probably do a more close hold dinner tomorrow amongst the my co-founders and management team.
Excellent. Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
And very great to hear. Well, super excited to have you on today's show. You actually have a very, very interesting journey, like many of our guests on the show. So we're going to take rewind the clock just a little bit, and we're just going to start from the beginning of your journey. Could you talk a little bit about kind of like where your family came from and where did they end up when they got to the U.S.?
Yeah, so both my parents, mom and dad, are from Saigon, or at least that's where they were born. My family, like probably my grandparents on both sides, extended from more like Hanoi, northern Vietnam, but eventually they migrated down before the start of what we call the Vietnam War, right? My parents immigrated over to the U.S. in 81, 82, separately. They weren't married at the time. And they had immigrated to Orange County, California, one of the, I guess, one of the bastions of Vietnamese people over in the U.S. And that's where they met.
Yeah. Wow. So they met in Orange County, and at that point, was there a lot of Vietnamese then?
I would say the community was small but growing. Specifically, at the time they were living somewhere between Westminster, Orange County, and they were doing multiple jobs. They kind of connected through my mother's younger brother, my uncle. He had kind of became friends with my dad, and then the introduction came to my mom. And then they got married somewhere between 1984 and 1985. I was born in 1985, so first in my family.
And how was it growing up at that time?
Orange County definitely was not what it is today. I would say at the time, at least from my family standpoint, socioeconomically, we're doing okay, but we probably low to mid class. My dad was doing some sort of printing job. My mom was working for, I think, New Line Cinema at the time. Eventually, they pulled their capital together, formed their own printing business. A lot of years of hard work. As far as myself, and then quickly came my sister Jennifer. I had a great childhood. Not everything was there, but as far as for our family, my parents worked hard. We always had food on the table. We always went to school. So that in itself was kind of taken care of. Eventually, I guess to kind of continue on the story, both my parents would help their extended families. My grandparents immigrated to the U.S. sometime when I was like around 8, 9 years old. So most of my immediate family, to include grandparents, uncles, aunts, are mostly in the U.S. now, spread throughout California. Yeah.
And so with them being in the States, and I guess how long did it take for you guys to immigrate the rest of your family over here, or has it been an ongoing thing?
No, it pretty much, anybody who's, most of my family is probably all in the U.S. now, and it probably was completed by the time I was about 10 or 11 years old. At least anybody who I have any real meaningful connection with. Just to give some context outside of that, so my parents, and then myself, the oldest child, my sister who's 2 years younger, she's 31 now, and then I have a younger brother, his name is Calvin, he's 22. You knew him at West Point, so he recently graduated with the class of 2018. That kind of completes my immediate family.
That's pretty crazy. So you're the oldest, and what sort of responsibility do you hold as like an older brother, being the first to having to kind of lead and pave the way for your siblings?
I think it's often looked as that, especially I think in Asian families, right? There's a lot of expectations on the oldest setting the correct way for our siblings. I'll be honest, if it is viewed as such, then I'm blessed, I'm lucky, I've had a lot of mentors along the way to help coach me get there. It wasn't me leading the way. I've certainly made my fair share of mistakes. My personal journey was a little bit more interesting. My parents divorced right after my youngest brother, or my younger brother was born. So at the time I was about 10 years old. My mother pretty much took, we all lived with my mother. My dad kind of moved off, and then so my mother was a single, young, working mother of 3 children. And so in that sense, I had to kind of jump in and fill a certain gap. Not to say that I was a perfect father by any means. I was still 10, 11 years old, trying to be a kid. But I think together with being a big brother to my sister, and me and my sister having to kind of play quasi father, mother to my younger brother while my actual mother was working. So it kind of created, a lot of interesting dynamics. Personally, for, me and my mother, I don't just see her as a mother. Kind of like your relationship with your own mom. I know you have a very special one. My mom is, not only is she my mom, she's my best friend, she's also my partner, and I see her in all those roles. Yeah.
And so, that role, it kind of like, you're kind of learning along the way. You said you're 10 years old, you're learning to be, both fill that father figure role, that older brother role, but also like the man of the house in a way. Was there a lot of, how did that feel? Like you had to still like do well in school? I don't know if you had to like take on a job early on, but did any of this kind of inspire you to one day go to the military academy? How did that end up?
There's a lot of things there that eventually, I guess, led me to West Point. I think really, when it came to my family, my mom, my sister, my brother, there was always a togetherness, right? Like we were one, and we were always going to survive this. We didn't really know what success looked like, but it was just just shared throughout all of us. It was always understood that we're going to get this done. We're going to survive this, right? We're going to make it work. My mom is going to get food on the table. She's going to get us to school. Me and my sister, we're going to either help her at her workplace, still kind of helping managing certain portions of the company. We weren't doing that. We were just helping out with small tasks. And then just taking care of my brother and trying to be the best older brother, older sister we could be. I never really thought about it as like, Calvin, I'm your dad, or, Jenny's your mom. It was just, I just tried to be the best brother I could be, whether that was like teaching him stuff, playing with him, taking care of him, being there for him. I think the role of this whole father figure, that didn't really dawn on me until much later. But it was always, we were so grateful for, my mother, her sacrifice. She could have just left everything there, but she always had this responsibility that these are my kids. I'm going to raise them to be the best human beings that I can. And, we wanted to honor that. We knew how hard she was working. She was pretty much, she was rarely, sleeping more than 4 hours a day. Just, whether it was working 1 job, 2 jobs, however it was to make things meet. And we kind of wanted to honor her with her hard work. So I never really thought about, I need to do well in school for me. I need to pave a path or whatever. It was just really, I need to do what I need to do to take care of this family. And I think my sister always viewed it the same, and eventually my brother came of that, right? That's not to say we did all this without help. While my dad did leave, his older brother, my uncle, was a large figure in my life. So he kind of played the, I don't want to say man of the house, but he filled a large role. So his background, he came to the U.S. with my brother along similar timelines. He probably came first and then brought my father over. But before then, he had served in the ARVN, or the Army Republic of Vietnam, along with his brothers, my uncles as well. Unfortunately, he lost his brothers, but he survived the war. He was actually in Infantry NCO. A lot of the large reasons of why I eventually steered to West Point. And so whether he was supporting us physically, monetarily, just being there for us, you know, to support us, right? Spending time with us. My mom, you know, was always working, so he would try to make time to take us to Chuck E. Cheese or Disneyland whenever, you know, that birthday came around. He was a huge figure in my life. And he, like my mother, is also, you know, like a person of character, very strong values. And I think through that, I probably just thought that a lot of his values, a lot of his strength, a lot of his leadership qualities stemmed from his time in the military. Because he loved his time there. He didn't really like war fighting or that, but he valued his time in the military, serving alongside, you know, other men and women, defending a cause that he believed in. And I think a lot of that kind of instilled certain values in me: service, community, brotherhood, sisterhood, wanting to give back, you know, being thankful for what I had, my family, being able to grow up in, you know, the U.S. I was thankful for what I had. I don't always, you know, my brother's sister, we don't always look back and go, you know, just because I lost a father, that was like, you know, devastating, or, you know, I felt that I was lacking. My mom provided everything I needed, complemented by my uncle. And I always felt blessed. I always felt thankful. I never felt like I was, you know, missing something compared with my friends or my peers. But all that, you know, wanting to give back, wanting to serve, wanting to do more, coupled with 9/11, which happened during my, probably beginning of junior year, right? A lot of those things eventually steered me towards wanting to serve as an officer, and then attend West Point.
How did you hear about West Point?
I was always a huge history buff. And you know, it's easy to kind of like recall all, like, you know, the famous West Point generals or leaders. And those things always stood out to my mind. I've always loved history, whether it was like, you know, any part of history: American history, European history, world history, Asian history, military history. So I was kind of a big buff in that sense. And then alongside, you know, just bringing back my uncle, he was also a huge history buff. And not only that, he spent a lot of his time building plastic Army models. So I don't know if you've ever seen them. They're really fine-tuned like models, whether they're Huey helicopters, little Army Jeeps, tanks, soldiers, all that. So you can imagine, probably the space is like big, this whole office. He recreated his own like Army base, which was it was all from memory, right? From his time serving in the ARVN in the war. And so he built this whole thing. So as a little kid, I was always play with it. And I always break it, he would hate it. But, you know, it was just like, he would still let me play. So a lot of those factors, you know, exposed me to a lot of things in the military, or at least military ideals. Reading about whether it was Robert E. Lee, you know, Grant, Stonewall Jackson, Eisenhower, and like Pershing and whatnot. A lot of famous West Point grads. It was kind of something that I aspired to emulate, right? Just not so much about, you know, war making or like, you know, being a great general. I think it was just about being a good leader and a strong person. And I think I generally associated those two, even as a high school student, with West Point. And I thought that West Point would allow me to become those two things, right?
That's very inspiring. I mean, what did your family feel when you told them that you wanted to go to West Point?
Devastated.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, think about it. Like my mom, she grew up in a war-torn country, right?
Yep.
And she left everything. I think by her count, I think she had to attempt to flee like 11 or 12 times in order to make it to the U.S. My uncle, the same thing. You know, again, he was an NCO in the, you know, ARVN Infantry. They saw a lot of, you know, the brunt of the battle. My mom's father, my grandfather, also served in the infantry. And so it's just like, you can imagine, it's just like, we left all this, we left this war-torn country for you to, you know, come to the U.S. or, you know, to be born in the U.S., to have this great education, great opportunities. And, you know, now you want to get back in it. Because obviously at the time, Iraq was happening, Afghanistan was happening. Right. So there were a lot of concerns. I mean, not to say that, you know, obviously my mother's opinion, my uncle's opinions have vastly changed over time. They came to see the value of West Point. My sister married my best friend from the academy, who's a 2006 grad. They're currently living in Portland, and my little brother went, so it's like a family at West Point. So obviously my family believes in it now, and they love it now. Sure. But at the initial, there was a lot of shock. Right? You can imagine, and however you characterize it, there was they all carried their own memories, their own like emotional baggage. I know we associate that as like bad, but you have to take from their perspective, right? They carried a lot of weight with them, and she was just afraid, or my uncle was afraid of me having to go through the same things that they've spent a large part of their life, you know, trying to get away from, right? Yeah. But overall, like as it is, you know, like the day I graduated, you know, my mom was in tears, my uncle was in tears, and then to kind of see it go forth. We were recently there again, 2018, after I graduated from my MBA program. I was up there seeing Calvin. You know, a little backstory, he's an infantry officer, just graduated Ranger School, super proud of him there. But May 2018, I was back there reliving everything 11 years later, wow. Right? Being able to see him graduate. My mom was there, my dad was there as well. West Point is a special place in our family, definitely.
How was your own personal experience going through West Point? Did it meet your expectations? Did you learn something that you didn't know prior to getting there? What was your experience like?
West Point, I mean, if I could just sum it up, I don't want to say sum it up in one word because that wouldn't do it justice. It was certainly more than what I had expected in every facet. It challenged me beyond what I had expected as well. I don't know what I really thought of our day. I don't know how you came to our day. My family certainly didn't drop me off. It was just like, you know, they took me to the airport. Sure. I flew. I think we got into Newark. Yeah. I got bused to the Sheraton maybe, and then, you know, from there just made my way to West Point. Next thing you know, somebody's in my face yelling. I think I always just thought that, you know, I would show up to our day, and then I would get in a uniform, I'd look pretty or whatever it is, and, you know, it'd all work itself out. I kind of like failed to realize there's probably a building up process somewhere in between. It was rough, man. I mean, I've done a lot of things in my lives I would just say, you know, are somewhat challenging or hard. Everything from infantry, Ranger School, Special Forces, all that. And people are like, you know, what's the hardest experience you've done, you know, training-wise? And it's like, you know, to be honest with you, I would say like, you know, what do we call it? The march back?
March
12,
back.
Was it 12 or was it 15 miles? I forget what it is.
Yeah, it's like 12 or 15, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like your rucksack is probably only like, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 pounds.
Right.
Which is like nothing compared to a Q course. But it's like, I think of that. That was like probably one of the worst marches of my life. And wow. So like that beast experience was rough. But I think it was because I had no real expectation, right? Never done Boy Scouts, never done anything outdoors. But I think it was more of the mental challenge of being separated from my mom, my little sister, my little brother, right? Somebody who, you know, I was very tied into my family. And we had done anything and everything together since my life started.
Right. And
to be able to be pulled from that, you know, to go through that experience, which was in the beginning a very lonely experience, but over time came to meet, you know, my best friends, you know, my brothers now, who I'm co-founding, you know, like Point Avenue, our current business with. It's been an incredible journey. Academically, academically I was challenged, but I generally did well. Physically, I grew. Militarily, or what I really associate with, like just general leadership, I grew. It was a phenomenal experience. I certainly probably didn't feel this way, like going through West Point, just like everybody else, right? Sure. You know, what is it that everyone likes to say? You know, you're not happy being there, but it's like, you know, like
being from there.
Being from there, right? Yeah. I definitely believe in it. And I think I got to witness it from a better level when my little brother went through it, right? 11 years after me, and to watch him go through the same struggles, make the same complaints, you know, like whining, whatever it is. And it's just like, yeah, I'm blessed. Wow. It exceeded expectations.
That's amazing.
That's probably the best way to say that, right?
So, your time there, you learned a lot along the way. What inspired you to pursue the path that you did? Which you ended up going infantry, right? Yeah. You said earlier SFAS, yeah. Special Forces. Yeah. What led you to pursue that path as opposed to any other?
Yeah. So, I want to make very clear, I have respect for every function within the military, right? Everything from combat support, combat service support. We need them all, right? But going infantry, I was never that. I mean, if you knew me as a cadet, I was a sluggo. I didn't do anything, right? There were some phases during my West Point career where I just tried to like do as least as possible, right? Give me back my time. And so I did all the intramurals, all that. The infantry thing, I think it was like one of those I wanted to follow in my uncle's footsteps, right? And then, watching G.I. Joe growing up and all that, I was like, I want to be the guy, jumping into battles, carrying a rifle, be all I can be. Don't lie, after Beast, I was like, no, thank you. I'm not doing this infantry stuff. And then, you go through plebe year and you kind of like gain some motivation, or I guess, whatever Huan is.
Sandhurst.
Yeah, and then, I definitely never did Sandhurst. And then so I got to Buckner and I was like, I'm going to give this infantry thing one more shot, right? Went through infantry week and I was like, and it was just, I remember like getting this helicopter, Black Hawk coming in, picking us up. I'm like, yep, I want to be up there. I don't want to do this infantry stuff no more.
Right.
I finally got to, and this goes on, I was like so confident. I was like, there is no way I am going to the infantry.
Yeah.
But I think it was more, once I got to junior year, the end of junior year or cow year, it was a reflection on the fact of why don't I want to do this? And I think to me, it was more of, after a lot of reflection, it was a realization that I was afraid to fail. So when the opportunity came up to do an infantry CTLT, I was like, let's figure this out for real, right? Let's give it one more shot. I was posted with a unit based out of Carson. Had a fantastic experience. And that kind of gave me the nudge, right? That combined with I was seriously afraid that I would fail as an infantry officer. Ranger school, all that sort of stuff. But, really leading people in such a very intimate fashion. And that was what challenged me. And then not only the fact that, I had a brotherhood, a very close group of friends who we call ourselves the Adelphos, like committed to going to the infantry together and knowing that I would be, not doing it alongside my West Point brothers, but also like a closer nucleus within that, definitely helped encourage me. Eventually there, definitely going, infantry, IBOLIC, Ranger school, I was like, all right, we'll see, right? I definitely, in the beginning, I thought it was kind of a five and fly sort of guy. Went on, deployed to Iraq, deploying to Iraq, eventually kind of working alongside an ODA team inspired me to pursue special forces and do it alongside another group of brothers at that same time. And eventually there was nothing long-sighted. It was never really planned. There was maybe an idea and a want, but that idea and want were certainly challenged along the way. And it was just kind of, just kind of figuring things out along the way. I want to make, super clear, I never left the infantry because I hated it. I absolutely loved the infantry. Right? I loved what I did. I loved that tactical experience. I loved leading people in a small unit fashion, which is kind of what inspired me to, do that at a higher level, go to special forces. And again, while I eventually exited the military, I didn't leave it because, I hated anything. Like, I absolutely loved my time in the military. Every part of it, every bit of it. And I certainly miss a lot of those aspects as well. But yeah, nothing was like, there was no grand plan, there was no grand strategy. It was just kind of figuring out along the way. And, I think those themes of chasing things that kind of scared me or made me nervous about whether or not I could succeed, whether I could lead at that level, whether I could perform at that level, definitely guided it. But the greater ideal of just wanting to do more, to affect more, to impact more, is probably what influenced my decisions along the way.
What sort of commentary would you give to anyone that probably doesn't know what they want to do, or they're afraid of failing? How can they kind of better be more informed to make some of those decisions? I mean, talking to other folks as well, it seems like the trend has been, you're not exactly sure what you want to do, but it kind of shapes over time. How do you better enhance that experience?
I think if you don't know what you want to do, right, you need to and however you do it, right, you need to challenge yourself to explore, right? Sitting there and saying, I don't know what I want to do is not like, that's not going to help you get anywhere, right? So where I am now in, my current, I guess, job or profession or, my role is I mentor a lot of students, right? And it's the same thing. I challenge them to explore, right? And a lot of that at first is, some pushing, right? But eventually we can pull them, right? So whether it's encouraging them to read, at West Point it's easy, right? You're surrounded by mentors everywhere. Just go out there and ask your teacher, right? Or ask a mentor, ask your TAC, ask your friend, ask your seniors, like, why did they choose what they do, right? So I think it's all about discussion, right? However you do it to get to discussion, whether it's by reading or talking to people, you need to have those discussions, or else how are you going to be able to make an informed decision, right? And so I encourage people to just discuss, right? Find communities, find mentors, right? Open up those kind of like communication channels and just learn, right? Just be a sponge, right? I think part of figuring out who you are is figuring out who you're not, right? Because the sooner you can figure out who you're not, you can stop pretending to be those things. I certainly didn't like the idea of like, crawling through mud, carrying a rifle, doing like, react to contact, but obviously I tried it enough times, I'm like, maybe I can do this, right? And so I think with that, part of exploring is failing. I think I encourage my kids to, if you're gonna fail quickly, right? Fail quickly so you can either learn, evolve, or transition away from it, right? Go find something else. Because in an ideal world, hopefully you're doing something you love, but hopefully you're also very good at it, right? But getting good at something takes time, right? Some people just generally quit an interest area because it's like, I'm not good at it, right? Well, being good at it takes time, right? So definitely explore. If you're gonna fail quickly at it, right? And just realizing that it's a long-term game. I think at the same time, before I get to fear, or maybe it ties in with fear, it's like you have to realize that you're not always going to be able to do what you want to do, right? And we all have bosses, right? I know the goal is to get to a position where you don't answer to, you answer to fewer and fewer people, but you're always going to answer to someone. There's always stakeholders in your lives, right? With that being said, sometimes you're going to have to do something, like a duty, whatever you want to call it, a position, functional area, so that you can pave the way to get to where you want to be, right? It's kind of like, I don't know, paying your dues. So don't trade off like long-term gains for like immediate gains. Is how I would look at that. I don't know, is that?
No, that's awesome. Yeah, that's very profound and actually very different from what I've heard in the past, but it makes a lot of sense. And I mean, I find that very insightful for myself as well, because we're kind of trying to figure out what we want to do right now, and it's hard to see in the future. So that's awesome. What did you do in Special Forces, if I may ask, as far as did you cover a certain region, and I guess what was your experiences like?
Yeah. So I was part of 1st Special Forces Group, specifically 1st Battalion, 1st Special Forces Group. So that battalion, 1-1, is based out of Okinawa, Japan. So the bulk of my Special Forces experience was in conducting operations in Asia, right? Primarily Southeast Asia. I was a line team leader, so part of a traditional ODA, and then I also served as a troop commander on what we call formerly a CIF, which was a Commanders in Extremis Force, but now we call it a CRIF, which is a Crisis Response Force. So every COCOM across the globe has a Special Forces Crisis Response Force, right? It's basically a Tier 2 element that provides direct support to the National Mission Force. During my Special Forces time, I was kind of blessed. I mean, I've been blessed throughout my time in the military, just in general. But I had an opportunity to deploy in support of OEF. Had a very, I guess, odd experience of being attached to a SEAL platoon. So deployed with them to Uruzgan province for a very short period. And then from there, I came back to Oki, took over a line ODA, 1123. So as part of that team, I was a detachment commander of a team of 12. We deployed in support of a lot of what we call JSETs, or Joint Combined Exchange Training, everywhere from Thailand to India, basically training those countries' special operations elements, right? Small unit tactics, you know, foreign internal defense, guerrilla warfare, whatever the mission called for. So it was a lot of advising and assisting. Eventually from there, I moved on to, you know, the PACOM CRIF or C11, and I was a troop commander there. So commander of about a troop, which is about 3 ODA teams plus all supporting assets. So we did a lot more CT focused missions, and we deployed to a lot of different countries throughout Asia, doing a lot of exchange training with also, like, typically it's their country's tier 1 element. So whether it's the Australian SAS, New Zealand SAS, to, you know, like Japan's JSOC, Thailand, Korea, so forth, so forth. So I had a lot of unique experiences. Pretty much, you know, the bread and butter of special forces is like to operate by, with, and through different partner forces, right? That's our strength, and that's what we're called on to do, right? To be able to operate with a lot of different allies, partners in very politically sensitive areas, right? And not whether to do it unilaterally or, you know, force them to do it, but to assist them throughout that spectrum. And to be able to not only do it from that side, but, you know, to do it through counterterrorism as well. It was definitely a very unique experience. And I'm blessed for that.
Coming from there, do you feel, I mean, I guess at some point you had to make that transition, right? And so, one, what made you decide to transition out? And then two, were you able to find that level of satisfaction, cohesion, and really that impact that you had when you were still serving?
I mean, I'm still figuring that out, but at least I'll tell you my feelings or sentiments up until now. So I finally made the decision as I was coming to the end of my troop command time. You know, what was I going to do next? Either go to ILE and then prepare for company command, or was I going to, you know, transition to the next phase? Again, I've loved every bit of my service. Primarily, I've loved all the people, all the mentors that I've been able to, you know, I've been surrounded with my whole life. If I'm successful at all, right, it's primarily because I've had a lot of people open doors for me throughout the way. So in that sense, you know, leaving that community was not an easy decision, as I'm sure it's not easy for anybody. But I had other goals as well. And eventually I wanted to start my own family. I tremendously admire, you know, military families because of the sacrifices they have to make, right? It's incredible. It's a lot. And I don't know how most husbands and wives do it. For me, just personally, when I started my own family, I wanted to do it outside of the military, you know, for my own reasons. And I also had other professional goals, right? Were kind of like the two things that were sitting in my head when I finally made the decision to leave the regiment, leave the Army. And so from there, I eventually pursued my MBA, went to the Wharton School. Graduated 2018, same time as my brother, which was fantastic because, you know, during the 2 years of my MBA experience, I got to spend time with my brother as well, kind of like rekindle, regrow. So that was fantastic. And then from there, I dabbled in a few, I guess, industry spaces. Had interned, you know, in Wall Street, exploring banking. Not to knock on banking. Banking is very, you know, it's like very instrumental part of our economy. Just particularly wasn't for me. And then from there, decided to, you know, explore other means. So after banking, one of my best friends, Danny Cuong, 2006 grad, had approached me and asked me to consider the education space. Kind of long story short, I'd known Danny at the academy. I served under Danny while we were in Iraq as infantry officers. Danny had eventually left and started in the education space back in about 2011, 2012. And they had just they started a very successful education company. Eventually, they chose to exit by selling to a larger education company. And he was exploring, next opportunities. He wanted to build, not any sort of copy paste, but he wanted to found another education company to create, an education movement in Southeast Asia, starting in Vietnam. And so he had approached me along with a number of our other brothers, right? Starting with Leon, Tin, and then eventually Derek as well, who I think you've met along the way. And so it's just it was interesting, right? I mean, I have no real education background other than, my own educational experiences. With that being said, it's what have I done a lot in the military? It's a lot of training and mentoring, right? And a lot of advising, assisting, kind of working by, with, and through people, helping people become, what they could be or want to be. And I reflect on that a lot. And it's definitely, the education space is something I personally value. And it's something that, as Asia, Southeast Asia, developing countries continue to, ascend or rise, it's a space that needs more people like us, right? I saw the value, I saw the vision, and over time, I came to deeply believe in it. So just to bring it all back, summer 2018, we entered Vietnam after about a year's worth of planning. Myself, my co-founders, Danny as CEO, we founded Point Avenue, which is primarily a K through 12 after school education company, right? So more of an academy or Hagwon. I guess to sum it all up, personally, I manage our admissions consulting or mentorship program or one-on-one mentorship program. It's been a ride, man. Entrepreneurship is, it's fun, it's exciting, it's certainly not without its own challenges,
Sure.
Especially operating in Vietnam, which is still, a developing country and all that. But to be able to create impact, I see it every day, whether it's from my students to my staff members, team members. It's been a wild ride, but it's been incredible. And I think more than anything, going back to your question, has it been, kind of easy? Has it been worthwhile? Yes, it's been an amazing journey. Just like before, when I was weighing my options, there were a lot of concerns I had, whether this was going to succeed or fail, right? Within a span of less than a year, we currently have more than 400 students. But I think it's more than that. I think my ability to make this leap, to make this journey has been kind of softened by the fact that I've been able to build this with a group of brothers and sisters that I've known for a long time, and a lot of us all stem back to West Point, right? Danny, again, 2006, Leon, another 2007 classmate of mine, Tin, he's a Marine Corps officer, fortunately graduated from the Citadel, but I met and served with him during my time in Special Forces. Wow. And then Derek, he's another 2006 USMA grad as well. We served together in Oki Special Forces. And so again, West Point has kind of, it's been the start of and continuation of many incredible relationships, mentorships, right? You and I pretty much reconnected or met through my brother and then reconnected through this. And it's kind of the institution that certainly, keeps on giving. It's been worthwhile. I'm sure we have lots of challenges ahead as we look to, kind of scale and grow and refine our product, refine our teaching methods. But I'm proud of being a part of kind of this movement and to be able to say that I helped facilitate this. Yeah.
Wow, that's nicely summarized. That actually encompasses a lot. I want to get to one more question before we close out. Is with all this in mind and where you're at right now, what is your definition of success? And two, have you feel like you have achieved it yet, or is there still more to come?
It's only interesting because every year around my birthday, I ponder this, have I grown from the last year, right? Mm-hmm. What has made 2019 better than 2018? Hopefully it is improving. being a history buff, so tying it all back, and then growing up in a setting, single mother, watching her just, bust her butt off to kind of make ends meet for us. I wanted to be successful. My primary reason for wanting to be successful was really to make my mom proud, to make her hard work, her journey from Vietnam, a war-torn country, to the US, to start all over again. Having, watched her endure, like her husband leaving, her partner leaving, and having to raise, 3 kids by herself, that's a lot on any person, right? And to do it alone, right? That's a lot. I love my mother. And so my reasons for wanting to succeed was to make her proud. Tying in history, is like, I wanted to, at some point, I wanted to put my name in the history books. I wanted, maybe like Leon's kids, like, Miles, to read about me, because, I wanted my name to be engraved in there, because really, as an extension of my mom, her sacrifices. And through my, I guess, military experience, from there, and I chose the military. Again, 9/11 had a large impact. I knew I wanted to give. I want to give back to a country that has given my family a lot. And in my 9 years in the military, I've been, again, afforded a lot of tremendous opportunities, whether it was like, leading troops into the mountains of Afghanistan, whether it was helping an Afghan village rebuild itself. I've been a part of a lot of unique experiences. And I've helped, whether it was individual soldiers, whether it was, the Afghan security force, whether it was like an Iraqi town, or community, I've helped a lot of them rebuild and grow and prosper. But I think looking back, my largest achievement, is not any of those things. I'm certainly, even though I'm in an education tech company now, I'm certainly not going to be making, the next like high whiz tech product. I'm not making your next iPhone. I'm not, piecing together AI, autonomous vehicles. I'm not putting a colony on Mars or anything like that. I think that my greatest strength is the ability to just influence and move people. And I think the greatest example of that is not anything I've just discussed, but it goes back to my brother. My brother Calvin is just a tremendous human being, right? I know he's a young officer, just graduated, so I'm probably putting a lot of weight on him. But he's just a great human being. West Point, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure he graduated with like a 3.99 as a physics major, right? He was on the parachute team. He's gone to the infantry, graduated from Ranger School. In every facet, what I couldn't do at West Point, he did and did 10 times better. And I expect the same thing of him, as he joins his first unit, and continues his service in the military, right? People are always worried about, is Calvin following in your footsteps? How can he match what you did? It's like, he's not growing up. He's not following in my shadows, guys. Right? He's not walking in my shoes. He's not doing any of that, because he blows me out of the water. And, I think back, I've been there for a lot of key parts of his life, but I wasn't always there, right? I certainly went to West Point, and there was a gap year there, but from changing his diapers to teach him how to ride his bike, from watching him with his first crush to, just gifting him his first car. When I moved to Vietnam, I gifted him everything. But to see him grow and transition, be the person he is, makes me realize that fundamentally, to me, how I define success for me is, or rather another way to phrase it is, what matters most to me is helping others become the best version of themselves. I have, it's not lost on me. I'm certainly not going to rewrite history. I'm not going to put my name in the history books, and nor do I really care. It's okay. My success will be defined by people like Calvin, because Calvin's going to go do great things, right? It's people like Calvin maybe people I have opened doors for along the way, who will go rewrite history, who will put their name in the history books, who will do great things, who will make this world a better place. So there's no way to, like, I guess, objectively quantify or qualify your statement. Yeah.
Wow. Profound.
Don't know about that.
No, that's incredible. Wow, what a whirlwind of experiences and just the journey so far. And I know you have a lot that you're going to do and continue to do and shape and influence people along the way. I just want to thank you so much for really just taking time out of your schedule to share your story. And I know it's going to be very inspiring and impactful to a lot of people. What is one way that folks can learn more about you and continue to follow along with what you're doing?
Well, definitely reach out to me, through Point Avenue. So it's just pointavenue.com. We're currently based here in Hanoi, Vietnam, quickly expanding. But as far as reaching out to me, you'll find me there. You'll find, me on LinkedIn, whatever it is, definitely. I'm easy to connect through you.
All right. Thank you so much, Tommy. I do appreciate your time.
Good deal. Thanks a lot, brother.
Thank you very much, man.
Yep.
All right. That's it. Yeah.